The legend of the Pirate King. In the darkest corners of the galaxy, where the stars barely shine and the silence of space presses down like a heavy blanket, there lived a name that made even the bravest tremble. Captain Kor, known to most as the Pirate King, was a figure of legend. His fleet, the Red Marauder, had been the scourge of the galaxy for years. No planet was too far, no ship too powerful, and no defense system too strong for Kor and his crew. The Pirate King had raided more than 100 planets, each time leaving behind nothing but ashes, fear, and broken dreams. For years, the galaxy's governments and military forces had tried to stop him. But every time they sent a fleet to face him, Kor's pirates destroyed them. His warships were fast, deadly, and always one step ahead. The pirates were known for their cunning, their willingness to fight dirty, and their ability to turn every battle into a bloody victory. Even the most seasoned commanders who had survived battles with the Red Marauder told stories in hushed tones. The stories always started the same way. You don't fight Kor. You survive him, if you're lucky. The fear of the Pirate King was as much a part of the galaxy as the stars themselves. But despite his fearsome reputation, there was one thing about Captain Kor that the galaxy had failed to understand. His strength was not just in his firepower or his tactics, it was in his mind. He was a master strategist, able to predict the movements of entire fleets before they even made a decision. He could see the weaknesses in his enemies and exploit them before anyone had a chance to react. Kor's warship, the Red Marauder, was a symbol of his power. It was massive, a behemoth of black steel, with gun turrets and weapon systems that could obliterate anything in its path. It was said that the ship had been built from the remains of hundreds of conquered vessels, pieced together in a way that made it virtually unstoppable. The Red Marauder was more than a ship, it was a fortress. And with it, Kor ruled the space lanes. But power, as they say, often leads to arrogance. And it was this arrogance that would soon be his undoing. As Captain Kor sat in his command chair aboard the Red Marauder, staring out at the vastness of space, he couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. For years, his reign had been uncontested. The galaxy had tried to resist him, but it was always the same, one defeat after another. The last few months had been especially fruitful. The pirate fleet had raided a series of high-value targets, wealthy colonies, trade routes, and military installations, and returned with enough loot to fuel their ships for years. But something was changing. Kor could feel it in the air, or perhaps it was just a nagging thought at the back of his mind. He had heard whispers of an enemy unlike any other, a force that wasn't afraid of the Red Marauder, and wasn't afraid of him. Some called them humans, a species that had recently risen in the galactic ranks. At first, Kor dismissed them. What could these primitive beings possibly offer that would pose a threat to him? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a crew member's voice. "Captain, we've received a distress signal from one of our raiding ships." Kor's eyes narrowed. He had no patience for failures, especially when they came from his own fleet. The Red Marauder had never been defeated, and he wasn't about to let a small incident change that. "Put it through," Kor ordered. The screen in front of him flickered, showing a pirate ship's captain, barely holding onto his composure. "Captain Kor," the man said, his voice trembling. "We've encountered resistance, unexpected resistance. The humans, they've destroyed half our fleet. We're retreating as fast as we can." Kor's eyes narrowed in disbelief. His grip tightened around the armrest of his chair. "Destroyed? You're telling me the humans destroyed half of your fleet?" The pirate captain nodded frantically. "Yes, Captain. They." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Kor in stunned silence. The other crew members exchanged uneasy glances. The Red Marauder's bridge was silent for a moment before Kor spoke again, his voice cold and dangerous. "Set course for the location of the attack. Now." Kor couldn't believe it. His pirates had never been outmatched. He had spent years building the most feared fleet in the galaxy, and yet these humans, with their primitive technology and unrefined tactics, had somehow managed to destroy half of his forces. As the red marauders sped through the black void of space, Kor's mind raced. Was this some kind of trick? A trap set by one of his enemies? Or was this something else entirely? He knew the galaxy had many dangers, but none like this. When the red marauder arrived at the site of the battle, Kor's eyes scanned the wreckage. Pirate ships, once powerful and feared, now floated lifelessly in the void. The humans had done this. Kor could feel it in his bones. As he surveyed the destruction, something unusual caught his eye. A small human warship, badly damaged but still intact, was floating near the wreckage. Its hull was covered in scorch marks, and yet it was still operational. It was then that Kor realized something. The humans were not like any enemy he had faced before. They fought differently, resourcefully, with a determination that seemed to defy logic. And they had just beaten him. The thought sent a chill down his spine. We need to find them, Kor muttered under his breath, staring at the small human vessel. He had spent years conquering planets and destroying fleets, but never had he felt fear like this. The Red Marauder was his fortress, his pride, and now, it seemed as though it was no longer invincible. The humans had done what no one else had been able to do. For the first time in his life, Kor doubted himself. His reputation, his power, everything he had built, was now in jeopardy. Could he defeat the humans? Could his fleet take on a force that had already outsmarted them? There was only one way to find out. The hunt was on. The Red Marauder drifted through space like a shadow, its engines humming softly as it moved closer to the wreckage of the pirate fleet. Captain Kor stood at the helm, staring out at the floating debris that had once been his pride. His mind raced, unable to shake the sight of the small human warship among the ruins of his fleet. Kor had spent years building his empire, feared across the galaxy for his ruthless tactics and brutal victories. His ship, the Red Marauder, was the most advanced and deadly vessel in existence. Nothing had ever come close to challenging his supremacy. Until now, the humans, with their primitive technology, had somehow destroyed half of his fleet. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this situation made sense. What do we know about them? Kor's voice was low, cold, filled with a quiet rage that simmered beneath the surface. He wasn't used to being caught off guard, and the humans had done just that. His first officer, a grizzled veteran of countless raids, stepped forward. "We've gathered some data, Captain. The humans, they don't fight like anyone we've encountered before. They don't rely on strength, but on strategy. They use their numbers wisely, and their ships, though smaller than ours, are designed to be fast and evasive." Kor clenched his fists. "I don't care about their tactics. I want to know how they destroy our ships. I want to know their weaknesses." The first officer hesitated. "They have a new weapon, Captain. We've intercepted transmissions. They call it the Lightbringer. It's a weapon unlike anything we've ever seen. It disables our ships with pinpoint accuracy, rendering our shields useless and crippling our systems before we even have a chance to retaliate." The mention of the Lightbringer made Kor's blood run cold. A weapon that could take down his fleet so easily. It was something he had never encountered, something that should not exist. The Red Marauder was built to withstand the best that the galaxy had to offer. If the humans could destroy it, then they were far more dangerous than he had imagined. Kor paced back and forth on the bridge, his mind working furiously. The humans had managed to inflict a defeat on him, something no one else had done. They had caught him off guard. But he wasn't the Pirate King for nothing. He wasn't going to let this stand. He would not be defeated by these humans. He would make them regret ever crossing his path. "What do we know about the humans themselves?" Kor asked, his tone turning sharp. The first officer cleared his throat. "They're resilient, Captain. We've learned they come from a planet called Earth. It's a small backwater world, largely ignored by the galactic powers until recently. Their species is strange. They're unpredictable, but they have an incredible drive to survive, and they fight for their homes and families with an intensity that's hard to match." Kor stopped pacing and turned to face his officer. "So, they're nothing special. just a bunch of fighters with nothing to lose. The officer didn't answer immediately, but Kor could see the doubt in his eyes. They are more than that, Captain. There's something different about them. The way they adapt, the way they think. It's almost as if they've been preparing for something like this. They don't fight to win. They fight because they have no choice. And that kind of determination is dangerous. Kor's eyes narrowed. Determination. The word echoed in his mind. For the first time in his life, the Pirate King felt the weight of something he couldn't control. This wasn't a battle he could win by simply overwhelming the humans with force. He needed more than just power. He needed strategy. He needed to outthink them. Prepare the fleet, Kor ordered, his voice cutting through the tension on the bridge. We're going to track them down. We will find their homeworld, and we will make them pay. This ends now. But even as he spoke, a gnawing uncertainty crept into his mind. How could he defeat an enemy that fought so differently? How could he crush an opponent who was willing to fight until the last breath, a force that had already beaten him once? The Red Marauder surged forward, its engines roaring to life as the pirate fleet prepared to hunt down the humans. But in the back of Kor's mind, a troubling thought lingered. What if the humans were the ones who had already won? As the Red Marauder cruised through space, Kor's mind continued to whirl. He had faced countless enemies in his long career, but none had ever made him feel this uneasy. There was something about these humans, something raw and untamed, that made them unpredictable. They didn't play by the rules. They didn't care about honor or tactics the way the galaxy's other species did. They fought for survival, and that was a far more dangerous thing. Back in his war room, Kor was joined by his most trusted lieutenants. Each one of them had seen battle, had killed countless enemies, and yet all of them knew that facing the humans would require something different. They would have to fight smarter, not just harder. They would have to be ruthless, not just brutal. The galaxy had always underestimated humanity, but now it seemed the humans had found a way to turn that underestimation into an advantage. I want a full analysis of their ships, Kor barked. Find out how they are able to use the Lightbringer. We need to know everything. If they can destroy us so easily, we have to turn the tables. We have to find a way to beat them. One of the lieutenants spoke up. What about the Lightbringer, Captain? Should we focus on finding a countermeasure for that? Kor's eyes glinted with cold fury. We'll focus on everything, every weapon, every tactic, every secret they have. They won't win again. As Kor's fleet moved toward the humans' territory, the tension aboard the Red Marauder grew. The pirates knew this mission could mean their end. They had heard the stories. The humans had already destroyed one of their best ships. What if this time they couldn't escape? Kor's thoughts turned once more to the Lightbringer. What was this weapon that could cut through his fleet so easily? And more importantly, how had the humans developed it? It was the one piece of the puzzle he couldn't solve. But no matter the odds, Kor knew he had no choice but to find out. If he didn't, the pirate empire he had built would be nothing more than dust in the wind. His eyes burned with determination. This wasn't over. It would never be over. The humans had made their move. Now it was time for Kor to make his. The Red Marauder cut through the stars, its hull gleaming under the light of distant suns. The crew worked in silence, each member focused on their task, but a sense of unease lingered in the air. Captain Kor's mind never left the humans. The more he thought about them, the more he realized how little he understood. He had conquered worlds before. He had wiped out entire fleets, destroyed the strongest of adversaries. Yet the humans were different. They didn't just fight. They survived. And they did it in ways that Kor had never seen before. They fought with desperation, with rage, but above all with intelligence. It was their minds that made them dangerous. The Lightbringer, a weapon capable of crippling his fleet, was evidence of that. The pursuit of Earth had begun. Kor's fleet moved deeper into uncharted space, far from the core worlds of the galaxy, heading towards the human homeworld. His sensors, once considered the best in the galaxy, now seemed insufficient. They had no reliable intel on Earth's exact location. They only knew that the humans had come from this unknown corner of the galaxy, and they had launched their surprise attack from there. The Red Marauder slowed as Kor stood on the observation deck, staring out at the dark expanse. The galaxy had always been his to command, his to conquer, but now it felt as if the very fabric of it was slipping through his fingers. He had no idea what Earth truly was, but he knew one thing. It was the key to understanding how to defeat the humans. His mind raced with plans and ideas. What if the humans had other weapons, ones even more dangerous than the Lightbringer? What if they had allies, hidden forces waiting to strike? He couldn't afford to take anything for granted. His enemies had already demonstrated they were capable of the impossible. "Captain," a voice called from behind him. Kor turned to see his first officer, Kira, walking toward him. "We've received a report. The humans are in our path. It seems they've been anticipating us." Kor's brow furrowed. Anticipating us? How? Kira glanced at the datapad in her hands. "They've set up a defense perimeter near the edge of their territory. We've detected multiple ships, human warships, smaller in size, but armed with the Lightbringer. They're not alone. It seems their military has been preparing for something, Captain." Kor gritted his teeth. "So, they've known we were coming. They've been waiting for us." It all clicked in Kor's mind. The humans hadn't been acting on impulse. They hadn't just fought to survive. They had been preparing for war. All this time, he had underestimated them. But now he had no choice but to respect them. These were not simple creatures. These were survivors, warriors in their own right. And now, they were preparing to make their stand. "Change course," Kor ordered, his voice steady despite the fire that burned inside him. "Prepare for battle. We'll meet them head-on." Kira hesitated. "Captain, there's something else you need to see. We've decrypted some of their communications. It seems there's more to this than just a defense strategy. The humans are planning something bigger. We don't know exactly what, but it's not just a fight for their homeworld. It's a fight for the entire galaxy." Kor narrowed his eyes. This was more than he bargained for. The humans were playing a game of their own, and it was one he didn't yet understand. "Show me," he said. "Now." Kira passed him the datapad. As Kor scanned the information, a cold chill ran down his spine. The humans weren't just defending Earth. They were preparing to go on the offensive. They had already begun coordinating with other alien species, gathering support from those who had been oppressed by the galaxy's larger powers. The humans, once thought to be weak, were forming alliances that would tip the balance of power in the galaxy. Kor's mind raced. This was no longer a simple war of conquest. This was a rebellion that could change everything. "They've set a trap for us," Kor muttered to himself, a dark smile creeping across his face. "They think they can stop me." Kira looked at him, her eyes filled with concern. "Captain, the humans, they're not afraid. They don't back down. They'll fight to the end." Kor laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "Let them come. We'll show them what it means to face the Pirate King." He turned and strode back to the command center. "Prepare the fleet for battle," he ordered. "We're going to Earth, and we're going to break their spirit. Once we do, their allies will turn on them, and we'll crush this rebellion before it even begins." As the fleet's engines roared to life, Kor could feel the anticipation building in the air. The humans were ready, but so was he. He had a fleet at his command. He had experience. And most of all, he had the will to dominate. But even as he gave the orders, a question nagged at the back of his mind. Could he truly defeat the humans? As the Red Marauder and the rest of Kor's fleet moved closer to Earth's defenses, the tension among the crew was palpable. The Pirate King had led countless battles, but this was different. There was something about these humans that unsettled him. They were unpredictable, clever, and determined in a way that he had never seen before. Kor's thoughts were interrupted as the fleet entered the outer edges of Earth's defense perimeter. They were getting closer now, closer to their ultimate confrontation. The humans were waiting for them. Kor stood at the helm, staring out at the vast expanse of space. He knew what was at stake. If he lost this battle, it wouldn't just be a defeat, it would be the end of his empire, his legend, his reign. "Ready the weapons," Kor commanded, his voice cold and determined. "Prepare for the final assault." The Red Marauder turned its engines toward Earth, and Kor felt the weight of history on his shoulders. The greatest battle of his life was about to begin. The Red Marauder and its fleet had reached the edge of Earth's defense perimeter. The vastness of space stretched before them, filled with the cold silence of the unknown. Kor's heart pounded as he gazed out into the void. This was it. Earth was ahead, and with it, the most critical battle of his life. He had crushed countless enemies before, but this time, the stakes were different. This time, they were up against humanity itself. "Captain," Kira's voice broke through his thoughts. "We've made contact with the humans. They're moving fast, too fast. They've launched a counter-offensive. It seems their ships are more advanced than we expected." Kor's eyes narrowed. He knew the humans had been preparing, but he hadn't anticipated this level of readiness. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to protect something far bigger than their planet. Kor had never thought of Earth as anything more than a stepping stone, but now he could feel the weight of its significance. The comms crackled as the voice of the human commander echoed through their communication system. "This is Commander Riley of Earth's Defense Fleet." The voice was steady and firm. "We know you're out there, pirate. This is our final warning. Leave now, or we will show you what it means to face humanity." Kor smiled darkly. He had heard threats like this before. But this one felt different. There was no fear in the human commander's voice, only resolve. He had seen that same resolve in countless other warriors who had ended up broken, their ships floating lifeless in the void. He would break them too. "Give them a warning, Kira," Kor said, his voice cold with the confidence of a conqueror. "Tell them that they are out of their league." Kira nodded and relayed the message. The comms crackled again. "We won't surrender," Commander Riley replied. "And if you think you can intimidate us, you're mistaken. We've learned how to fight. We've learned how to win." Kor's grip tightened on the railing in front of him. His enemies had no idea what they were about to face. The humans had learned how to fight, yes, but so had he, and he was no stranger to victory. "Prepare for battle," Kor commanded. "Set all weapons to full power. We break through their lines, or we don't return." The fleet surged forward, and the space around Earth exploded into chaos. The humans didn't hesitate. They engaged the pirate fleet with everything they had. Kor's ships fired their first salvo, but Earth's defense ships were quick to retaliate. The humans fought like demons. Small but deadly warships darted through space, launching surprise attacks, hitting vital systems on the pirate fleet with pinpoint accuracy. Kor's ships returned fire, launching massive volleys of energy blasts, but Earth's defense ships weaved through them with impressive agility. The humans were unrelenting, their tactics unlike anything Kor had faced before. They were organized, coordinated, and disciplined. The battle was unlike any Kor had seen in his career. It wasn't a war of numbers or firepower alone. It was a war of will. The humans fought with a sense of purpose and unity that was beginning to unsettle Kor. He had always seen soldiers as tools, easily replaced once they were broken. But these humans fought with something deeper, a desire to protect their home, their families, their future. And that made them dangerous. In the chaos of the battle, Kor's flagship, the Red Marauder, found itself locked in combat with one of Earth's most formidable warships, the Defender. It was a heavily armored ship, bristling with weaponry, its engines glowing brightly as it maneuvered with terrifying speed. "This is it," Kor muttered to himself, watching the Defender lock onto his ship with its long-range weapons. The first shots rang out, shaking the Red Marauder with their force, but Kor's crew was ready. They returned fire, targeting the weak spots in the defender's hull. Shields at 50%. Kira called out from the command console. They're strong, but we can break through. Kor's eyes remained fixed on the battle ahead. He could feel the tension in the air, the pressure mounting as the two ships exchanged blows. The defender wasn't going down easily, but neither was the Red Marauder. The pirates had fought through tougher odds, and Kor was determined to see this through. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the Red Marauder, sending a jolt through the ship, shields failing. The technician called out, "We're taking heavy damage." Kor's mind raced. This was not the time to hesitate. The humans were adapting quickly. Too quickly. They were learning how to counter his moves, how to anticipate his tactics. He couldn't afford to keep fighting this way. "Kira, order the fleet to fall back." Kor commanded, "We need to regroup. We can't keep fighting them head-on. We need to rethink our strategy." Kira nodded and relayed the orders. The fleet began pulling back, but the humans weren't letting them retreat so easily. Their ships continued to harass the pirate fleet, targeting weak points and trying to trap them into a losing position. The humans were relentless, showing no mercy, no hesitation. As the pirate fleet retreated, Kor's frustration mounted. He had underestimated the humans, and now they were proving that they could not only defend their home, but could also fight on their terms. The battle raged on, but Kor's mind was already plotting their next move. The humans had shown their strength, but they had also shown a key weakness. They were predictable. Their defense was strong, yes, but their offensive strategies were still vulnerable. As the pirate fleet pulled back into the shadows of nearby asteroid fields, Kor's eyes gleamed with a new resolve. This was far from over. If the humans thought they had won this round, they were wrong. The fight was just beginning. Kor stood in the command center of the Red Marauder, his fists clenched as the holographic display flickered with tactical data. His mind raced, trying to process everything that had just happened. Earth's defense fleet had forced them to retreat, something he never expected to happen. The humans were unlike any adversary he had encountered before. They fought with relentless determination, and more dangerously, they adapted. They had learned, and in that moment, Kor knew they had done more than just defend their planet. They had sent a message. They were ready. "Captain, we've analyzed the human tactics," Kira said, her voice cold and focused. "They're using guerrilla strategies, hit-and-run tactics that make it difficult for us to pin them down. It's no longer just about firepower. It's about their ability to stay unpredictable." Kor ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his thoughts swirling. The pirates had always prided themselves on their unpredictability. Their strength had been in their chaos, in their ability to strike quickly and vanish before their enemies could react. But now, for the first time in his life, Kor felt that he was the one who was being hunted. "They're not just defending Earth," Kor muttered. "They're preparing for something more." Kira's expression softened, but her words remained sharp. "We need to figure out what that is, Captain. If we don't, we might never get a second chance." Kor nodded grimly. He had always been quick to strike, quick to assume that the enemy would fold under his dominance. But the humans weren't like the other species he had encountered. They were learning faster than anyone anticipated. The battle had been far from over. It had just begun. As the Red Marauder limped through the asteroid field, Kor took a deep breath. He needed to come up with a new plan. He needed to understand what made humans so resilient, so dangerous. "Let's turn the tables," Kor said, turning toward his crew. "If they're unpredictable, we'll make them even more unpredictable. We'll create chaos on their terms." Kira looked at him, puzzled. "How do we do that, Captain?" "We infiltrate their ranks," Kor replied, his voice growing steadier. "We disrupt their communications. We create confusion among their leadership. Their unity is their strength. But if we can make them doubt their command structure, we can break them." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. It was a risky plan, but it was the only way they might regain the upper hand. They had no choice. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Riley stood on the bridge of the Defender, gazing out at the dark expanse of space. The battle had been hard-fought, but they had won. For now, she could feel the weight of their victory, but it wasn't enough to erase the nagging feeling that the pirate threat was far from over. "We've pushed them back," Riley said to her crew, her voice firm but tinged with exhaustion. "But we know they won't stop. We need to stay vigilant." A young officer at the communications station looked up. "Commander, we're picking up strange signals. It's not like anything we've seen before." Riley's brows furrowed. "What kind of signals?" "I'm not sure, Mom," the officer replied. "It's like they're being deliberately scrambled, but there's a pattern to it. It almost looks like someone is trying to create confusion." The hairs on the back of Riley's neck stood up. It was exactly what Kor would do. He had a reputation for playing mind games, for using tactics that made his enemies doubt themselves. Riley clenched her fists, already thinking 2 steps ahead. If Kor thought he could disrupt their command, he was in for a rude awakening. Earth's defense was more than just weapons. It was unity, coordination, and the strength of a people who would fight for everything they had. "We'll outsmart him," Riley said, her voice steady, almost a whisper to herself. "Prepare for a counteroffensive." Back on the Red Marauder, Kor watched as his crew prepared for the next phase of their mission. He had underestimated the humans before, but not again. This time, he would be the one in control. The Pirate King wasn't just going to take Earth. He would shatter it from the inside. The humans had a strong defense, yes, but every defense had its cracks, and Kor had always been excellent at finding those cracks. The plan was simple: infiltrate the human communication networks, cause enough chaos to create distrust among their leaders, and let their own paranoia do the rest. Once their unity faltered, the pirate fleet would strike again, but this time with precision, making the humans think that they were under attack from within their own ranks. "Activate the cyber warriors," Kor ordered. "I want all systems hacked and scrambled. Disrupt their entire fleet. Let's see how they handle a war within their own walls." Kira nodded and began issuing orders. The pirate fleet's technological prowess was their greatest asset. They weren't just fighters. They were masters of the digital battlefield. Kor had no doubt that they could throw Earth's communication systems into complete disarray. On Earth, the battle for control over their communication systems had begun. The human leadership quickly recognized the pirate attempts to infiltrate, and Commander Riley wasted no time countering the threat. "Seal off all communication channels," she ordered, her voice calm but firm. "Send out false signals. Make them think we've cracked. We won't let them see us falter." Riley understood what Kor was trying to do. He wasn't just attacking Earth's ships. He was attacking the very core of their unity. If the humans let their guard down, even for a second, the pirates could exploit it. But Riley wasn't going to let that happen. She had seen humanity through worse odds. This would be no different. The game of cat and mouse had begun. Kor was playing his usual tricks, thinking he could outsmart humanity. But the humans were not the easy prey he thought them to be. They were fighters, just like him. But they had something more, a bond that no pirate could break. As the Red Marauder moved closer to Earth's defenses once again, Kor felt something stir deep inside him. He had seen many armies rise and fall, but the humans, they were different. They weren't just defending a planet. They were defending their legacy, their survival. And that, Kor realized, made them far more dangerous than anything he had ever faced before. Kor's grip tightened around the armrest of his command chair as the data streamed in. The Red Marauder had launched a full-scale digital assault on Earth's communication networks, and it was going precisely according to plan. At least, that's what he thought. His cyber warriors had broken through multiple security layers, sending misleading signals, causing confusion, and making it look like Earth's command structure was crumbling. Yet there was something unsettling about the human response. They were adapting faster than expected. "Captain, Kira's voice interrupted his thoughts. We've intercepted a counter-signal. They're reorganizing. We've underestimated them. Kor's eyes narrowed as he looked at the holographic map in front of him. The humans were using tactics he had never seen before: false broadcasts, decoys, and misdirection. They weren't just responding to the attack. They were reversing it. How? Kor growled, his voice a low hiss. How are they doing this? We've triggered something inside their command structure, Kira explained, her voice growing more concerned. It's as if they're using the chaos we've created to recalibrate their entire fleet. They're using their own confusion to strengthen their positions. Kor slammed his fist on the armrest, his frustration mounting. No, they should be falling apart by now. They're supposed to be weak. You were right about one thing, Captain, Kira said, her gaze steady. They fight in ways we don't understand. They're unpredictable, but they're also resilient. Kor took a deep breath. Resilience. It was a word that had begun to haunt him over the past few days. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were evolving in real time, pushing themselves beyond their limits. And each time he thought he had them cornered, they would break free, stronger than before. It was clear now. Earth wasn't just some isolated planet waiting to be conquered. Humanity was a force, one that would not bend to his will. And if Kor couldn't break their spirit, then he would have to break something else. Their trust in their own leaders. We'll push harder, Kor said, his voice now full of resolve. We'll create more chaos, but this time, we attack their hearts. On Earth, Commander Riley was beginning to feel the weight of the situation. She knew that Kor's attack on their communication systems was just the beginning. His real goal was to fracture their leadership, make them second-guess each other, and ultimately destroy the unity that kept them strong. And it was working. Until now. We've regained control of most of our networks, Riley said, her voice steady but strained. But Kor won't stop until these divided us. We have to stay one step ahead. She looked over at her command staff, their faces etched with worry. They had been through a lot already, and now they faced a new challenge. Kor was no longer just a pirate. He was a strategist, one who knew how to hit where it hurt. But Riley wasn't going to let her people fall apart. She had been through this before, many times. She knew what it took to keep a team together, to inspire them to rise above the chaos. It was time to remind them of who they were. Gather everyone, Riley commanded, her tone firm. We need a unified front. If Kor thinks he can break us, he's in for a surprise. Kor stood in the heart of the Red Marauder, staring out at the vast expanse of space. His fleet was ready to strike again. But this time, he was approaching the battle with a different mindset. He wouldn't just attack Earth's systems or their command structure. He would attack their very beliefs, the core of what made them strong. We're going after their leaders, Kor said, his voice cold and determined. We make them doubt their resolve. If we can make them question everything they fought for, the war will be over. He turned to Kira, who stood beside him, her face a mask of concentration. Launch the infiltration squads. Target their leadership. We need to make them lose faith in their own strategy. Understood, Captain, Kira replied, her voice as sharp as ever. But be careful. If we fail to divide them, we may be playing into their hands. Kor nodded grimly. He understood the stakes now more than ever. If they couldn't break Earth's command, if they couldn't sow enough doubt, they would lose the advantage. But if they succeeded, the humans would crumble from within. Back on Earth, Commander Riley was addressing her team in the war room. The room was filled with officers, each of them working tirelessly to ensure the defense of their planet. Despite the constant bombardment of misinformation and disruption, they had managed to regain control. But Riley knew the fight was far from over. We have to stay united, she said, her voice carrying authority. Kor is trying to break us, but we will not let him. Our strength lies in our resolve. And as long as we trust each other, we will not fall. One of the officers raised a hand, concern in his eyes. Commander, they've launched new infiltration squads. They're targeting our highest leaders, trying to create confusion within our ranks." Riley's eyes hardened. She had expected this. Kor was playing a dangerous game, but she wasn't going to let him win. "We'll double down on security," Riley ordered. "We'll identify and isolate the threats. But above all, we'll stand together. If Kor wants to see us divided, he'll have to do it with more than just words." As the team moved to implement Riley's orders, the room buzzed with determination. Earth was no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their very identity. And no matter how many times Kor tried to divide them, humanity would always find a way to come together. Kor's fleet moved into position, ready to launch their final strike. But in his mind, something was beginning to shift. The more he thought about the humans, the more he realized how different they were. They weren't just defending their planet. They were defending everything they stood for. And that kind of conviction wasn't something that could easily be destroyed. As the Red Marauder prepared for its next assault, Kor felt a strange sense of unease. His plan was brilliant. He had always been one step ahead. But humanity had something he couldn't understand, something that was beginning to frighten him. He had underestimated them before. And now, for the first time, Kor wasn't sure if he could win. The stars seemed to tremble as the Red Marauder sailed deeper into the void. Kor's thoughts were a storm of doubt and frustration. He had tried everything: disruption, infiltration, manipulation, but nothing had worked. The humans had proved to be more resilient than any enemy he had ever faced. Worse, their unity, something he had never fully understood, was now more of a weapon than a weakness. He had underestimated them from the start. The humans, despite being outnumbered, cornered, and tested beyond measure, had stood firm. Each time he thought he had broken their resolve, they had proven him wrong. They had adapted, rebuilt, and come back stronger than before. They didn't fall apart like the countless other species he had crushed in his campaigns. And now, in the cold silence of space, Kor knew that his own crew was beginning to feel the same fear. "There's a change in the air, Captain," Kira said, her voice low and grave as she stood beside him on the command deck. Kor glanced at her, but his gaze drifted out toward the stars. The battle was no longer about tactics or firepower. It was about something deeper. Humanity's strength wasn't in their ships or their weapons. It was in their resolve, in their belief that they could win, even when the odds were against them. "Do you feel it?" Kor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kira nodded slowly. "They've come together. They've found a way to fight back. They've united in a way that we didn't expect. They're leaders. They're stronger than we thought." Kor clenched his fists, staring out into the infinite darkness. He had once believed that fear was the most powerful tool in warfare. He had used it to bend planets and civilizations to his will. But now, facing the humans, he realized that fear was a double-edged sword. It could break them, or it could make them stronger. "Captain," one of the officers called, snapping Kor out of his thoughts. "We've detected a massive energy surge. It's coming from Earth." Kor's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment he had been preparing for. He had hoped that by dividing their leaders and sowing doubt, he could break the human spirit. But instead, they had united in the face of his attacks. Now, they were preparing to retaliate. "Captain, the energy readings. They're too powerful. It's something we haven't seen before," the officer continued, his voice trembling. Kor's mind raced as he processed the information. What were the humans planning? Could they have developed a weapon capable of turning the tide of battle? Was this their final strike? "They found something," Kor muttered, his voice tight with realization. "A way to defeat us." Kira's eyes narrowed. "We can't let them use it. We can't afford to lose now." Kor stood still, his thoughts darkening. He had pushed humanity to the brink, but they had always fought back. And now, with this new weapon, they might just be able to win. "Prepare for battle," Kor commanded, his voice hardening. "We're going to strike first. We can't let them use whatever they've discovered. If they launch that weapon, we lose everything." As his crew scrambled to execute his orders, Kor's mind raced. What had the humans uncovered? What secret weapon did they possess that could shift the balance of power so drastically? He could feel the weight of the coming conflict settling on his shoulders. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Riley stood in front of a holographic map of the battlefield, her expression grim. She knew what was at stake. The energy readings from their new weapon were off the charts. If they could launch it successfully, they could break Kor's fleet. But it wasn't without risks. "The horizon cannon is ready," Riley said to her team, her voice steady. "But it's untested. We don't know how much damage it could do to their ships, or to ours. But we have no choice. This is the last option we have." The room was tense. Her officers exchanged nervous glances. Everyone knew what this meant. If they were successful, Earth would win. But if the weapon failed, it could destroy everything. "I don't care what happens," Riley continued, her eyes sharp with determination. "We fight for Earth. We fight for each other. And if this weapon can stop them, we'll use it, no matter the cost." Her words were met with silence, but the silence was one of resolve. Every officer in the room knew that the next few minutes would decide the fate of their world. Kor's fleet was moving into position, and the humans were preparing for their final strike. The tension was unbearable, hanging thick in the cold air of space. For the first time, Kor could feel a deep unease creeping over him. The humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their place in the galaxy, and that made them dangerous. "Captain, the humans are preparing to launch," Kira said urgently. "We're in range. We can't avoid it." Kor stared at the readout, his heart pounding. This was it. The moment he had feared. The moment that would decide everything. "Fire everything we've got," Kor ordered, his voice sharp. "We can't let them unleash whatever they're planning." The battle that ensued was one of unimaginable scale. The Red Marauder and its fleet clashed with Earth's forces, a maelstrom of energy and fire that lit up the stars. But no matter how powerful Kor's weapons were, he couldn't stop the humans from launching the horizon cannon. The cannon fired. A brilliant beam of energy shot out from Earth, its light blinding, its power overwhelming. It tore through Kor's ships with surgical precision, cutting through their defenses and shattering their hulls. The Pirate King's fleet, once unstoppable, was now being decimated in seconds. Kor watched in stunned silence as his fleet was torn apart by the humans' final weapon. He had underestimated them. He had thought that they were nothing more than a weak, fragmented species. But now, as he saw the destruction unfold before him, he realized how wrong he had been. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the battle ended. The horizon cannon had done its job. Kor's fleet was broken, and Earth had won. But Kor didn't celebrate. There was no victory in this for him. As his ship drifted through the remains of the battlefield, he understood the bitter truth. The humans had beaten him, not with their weapons, but with something far more powerful, their unity. They had struck back, and now the galaxy would never be the same.